Okay, yeah, Commissioner, I think we are recording and live. So yeah, it's all yours.
Okay, looks like we lost Jesse. Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Then this is meeting of the ad hoc body worn camera ad hoc and body worn cameras ad hoc. I'm Brenda Harbin Forte, chair of the ad hoc. And I see Marcia joining us. Commissioner Peterson is joining us. She's a member of the ad hoc. Jesse Shea was just on, and I think he'll be joining us back. Lieutenant.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Good evening. We have Lieutenant Joseph Turner. We have Reginald Lyles, former chief, assistant chief. I'm going to mess it up. Reggie Lyles, Officer Felicia Cervantes, Deputy Director Kiana Soso, and there's Jesse back as well.
Excuse me, is there a link for the panelists? I couldn't find it.
Yeah, it got sent out. Two notices got sent out, one yesterday and another one today.
I don't know what's happening.
2 reminders, yeah.
Is it to my exchange?
It's to your commission email. Should it go somewhere else?
No. Found it. I want to get on my computer.
Okay.
My laptop.
Okay. All right. Well, why don't we get going? And if anyone else comes, we indicated, Jesse, we heard from who said they couldn't make it this evening?
E. Dixon.
I'm sorry.
Katie Dixon.
Oh, yes. Right. So we'll go on. Others may join us. I'd like to kind of pick up, and I think Reggie is frozen. He's sitting too still. So,
No, I'm okay.
Oh, okay then. All right. So why don't we go, Lieutenant Turner, we'll pick up. Is there anything that we need to discuss before Lieutenant Turner starts his screen sharing and before he makes the text big enough for veteran eyes to see? Okay. All right. So let's go, Lieutenant Turner.
Okay. Yeah, I'm trying to get you guys out of the way there. So hopefully you can still see the text.
Yes.
Okay.
Very good.
Okay.
Good.
Yeah. So I did not make many substantive changes, to the document. I apologize for not sending it out, but there really wasn't much to change. Just basically some of the stuff that we talked about last time. So I went through the document. Everywhere there were acronyms. For the first time, I found the acronyms and then spelled them out. So you see Oakland Police Department, CID, OIA, things like that. There we talked about combining a couple sections here. So just this battery maintenance was actually a better combined there. That was a good suggestion. Several places where there were some acronyms. And in places where used codes or something like that. I know we did also talk about sort of police speak, or there was an idea of level 1. So I linked back to that policy and procedure that was passed by the Police Commission on level 1 investigation. So it's very clear to everyone what that means, and for members of the public. And I think that was the extent of the change. And besides one at the beginning, which we talked about. So just added a line here that does say the failure to adhere to this policy will be subject to corrective discipline up to and including termination, which is possible. So.
Okay, very good.
Yeah.
Let's, I see that Pastor Thompson is on. Pastor Jacqueline Thompson has joined us. Good evening, Pastor Jackie.
Good evening, everyone.
So this is good. Why don't we start with the admonition failure to adhere to this policy will be subject to corrective action, including discipline up to and including termination. This was something that I think we all felt strongly about, and that it ought to be in upfront early on in the policy. Anyone have any thoughts, suggestions, corrections, improvements for this language?
I'm sorry, Commissioner, can we go back to the first paragraph? I was in the airport at our last meeting, but I've since read the policy. So I just have a question.
Okay, this is the Lieutenant Turner.
Yes,
This
yes.
is the first paragraph. on
Okay,
this
no, I meant the
agreement.
paragraph above the one you're referencing with the failure to adhere. So again, as I stated the last time we met, I think it would be important right around that first sentence or that first paragraph to add, in addition to accountability and transparency, some kind of notion of public trust.
Okay.
Because for me, it does not make sense to have a policy around community policing and say that that is what the goal that we would like, the culture we would like to embrace, which is very connected to public trust, and not have that reflected in all of the policies across the department. So perhaps something that says strives to use technology that promotes accountability, transparency, and public trust. Something simple like that. So
Okay.
if I can add these notes or send these notes separately because I don't
No,
want to
let's-
hold up the process, but.
No, let's do it now. I like that. I like
I
that.
did want to note that. And then moving down from there,
So hold on a second. Okay, anybody on that change that was just suggested? Anybody else want to be heard on that? I think that's excellent. Okay, go
and then
ahead.
just a ticky-tack note, the redundancy of the word policy in the beginning of the second paragraph, the intent of this policy is to set forth departmental policy, perhaps could be changed to something like the intent of this order, because the title of the document at the top says that it's an order. So the intent of this order is to set forth departmental policy and procedures. That way you're not using the word twice, and it makes it clear what the intent of the document is.
Sure, yeah.
Hey,
Okay,
excellent.
and then moving down, well, all the rest I have are below that. So now we're at failure to adhere to this policy.
Okay, all right, very good. Thank you. Okay, if nothing else on that, I suppose then that we can move on into the next section there, general provisions. I don't think that we suggested anything. Anybody got anything for A1 or A2? I don't think we had anything from the last time. We got rid of the any hardware or software. Okay, got that. Okay, why don't we go into B1, the where requirements. And this, Lieutenant Turner, you really just did, you spelled out the acronyms, right?
Yeah, so I spelled out the acronyms, and I know there was a little bit of, not confusion, but justifiable concern around the members, let's say, of Criminal Investigation Division. If they put on like anything that says police or part of their uniform, that we want them to be wearing this camera if they're going out to do, that type of enforcement action. So to change that from who are in uniform, because that might say the whole uniform as opposed to putting on, a vest or something like that if they're going to serve search warrants. That if they go into the field in any sort of uniform equipment, that they have their body camera on there.
Okay. Can I ask you, in terms of the alphabet soup, Office of Internal Accountability, the OIA,
Yes.
is that the new name of IAD, or is there still Internal Affairs Division?
There is still internal affairs. This is the new name of OIG. We had our own Office of Inspector General to make
okay.
sure that everyone was clear that it did not conflict with the police commissions. We changed the name.
Oh, okay, then, okay. So Office of Internal Accountability is basically your OIG. Okay, got it. Okay. Anything, anyone on B1?
I just want to be clear, this, the officers are out in their jumpsuits because they're attack unit or crowd control operation. they would also have body worn cameras?
Yeah, but we don't have jumpsuits nor raid jackets. We don't have any of that type of uniform. But yeah, anyone who's doing that sort of crowd control or TAC units is in full uniform.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. Any other questions, suggestions, additions for B1?
I don't know, should that be outlined, stated in the policy? Because like I said before, I think these policies should be written for the citizens to understand. You know, officers understand things because that's part of their culture and their job. But see, I remember when Oakland did have jumpsuits.
Yeah.
And so I would assume that they still had them. You know they did, they don't, we don't. So should we somehow make it clear that all uniforms?
Well, I mean, I could reference back to the uniform policy because we have, I mean, the problem is we have a separate policy on uniforms. There's a whole policy on uniform and personal appearance, which is a separate one that goes into all the authorized uniforms.
But I think what former Officer Lyles is referring to is that they're in the field, engaged with the public. Will they have a uniform that requires they also have a camera? Is that it, Reggie?
Yeah, I'm driving at that. I just want the officers to have it thoroughly clear that every time they leave, identifying themselves as a Oakland police officer, they got to have that body worn camera if they're dealing with the public. Is
Yeah,
that correct?
that is correct.
Not
So
wrong.
that's why, yeah, we in uniform or wearing uniform equipment.
And the uniform includes, how many uniforms do you have? You just have the uniform you're wearing now.
Yeah,
What are the other uniforms that you have?
we have three: the Class A uniform for ceremonial. We have
Okay.
a Class B, which is the wool uniform that I'm wearing now, and we have a Class C, which is a cotton wool blend, which is what the majority of officers wear because that one is easily laundered.
And there are no jumpsuits like they used to have. There are no other things.
No, there are no jumpsuits. There are no raid jackets. The only officers who wear jumpsuits are the people in the helicopter.
Yes.
Yeah, for a flight suit. But no, there are no jumpsuits. There are no raid jackets and jeans.
There's no crowd management
No.
team uniform.
No.
And okay.
So this interfaces with your uniform policy. And so it should mirror that.
Yeah, that's correct. So it's the uniform policy sets forth what officers are allowed to wear and when. So for instance, if you are in the field and patrol, you have to wear a full uniform, the shirt and the pants, plus specific safety gear, plus your vest, for instance. So all of that is required from the uniform policy.
Let me ask it this way. If you are not in a uniform and you interface with the public, what is that assignment? And is that covered by this?
Yeah, that's a good question. And this is one where we've had, some not disagreements, but questions before. Is there are the main assignment that could happen is criminal investigations. So as you know, most criminal investigators wear suits, a business suit. They may identify themselves by a badge. Our uniform policy specifically does not allow the badge to be worn on a chain. So we do not do that like NYPD or San Francisco or so. You see them pulling that badge out and flip. We don't do that. They wear it on their belts. So they might wear a badge and a gun, but that is the only thing that identifies them as a police officer. Otherwise, they're wearing business suits. That is typically how our investigators dress. Except on casual Fridays where it's a little more casual. But that is a non-uniform assignment where they may have significant contact with the public, doing things like going out and doing follow-up investigations, things of that nature. Now, if they are not going to, and we do not allow them to conduct enforcement activity in those business suits, for instance, there is always the possibility that something could happen while they are out, just like any officer, when they are out canvassing for witnesses and then they see the suspect or something like that. But that is a rare occurrence. And most of the time, what ends up happening is that they, say a safe distance away and call for a uniformed patrol.
So I guess the question then is, Lieutenant Turner, in that capacity, in their suits, does your policy, notwithstanding what's written here, the uniform policy require that they have a body worn camera?
It does not.
So the wear policy does not, but aren't all sworn members assigned a BWC? So they should have a BWC.
Yes.
with them, just not worn.
Right, sorry, I don't want to misspeak. They have one. So a member who is normally assigned to criminal investigations, if they have to go work crowd control, they put on their uniform, they are assigned a body worn camera, they have to wear it by this policy. They are not exempt from other parts of the policy. If they go to assist with a search warrant, they put on a piece of uniform equipment, identifies them as police, they have to have their body worn camera on. They have an ancillary assignment on the SWAT team, they have to wear the body worn camera. It's only when they are in their suit, then they're not required to wear the body worn camera.
How is that practically?
Yeah.
How's that practically done if they have to go out, a detective has to go out and
Yeah, so what we do is we have these docks for the cameras. So if you saw when we did the demonstration, we have the cameras are set up in docks. So we actually have the criminal investigations division in their offices. We have docks, so they have their camera in their docks.
they have to grab it and go out.
They can grab it and go out. Yeah, so for patrol, all the docks for the cameras are in the report writing room, a central place. They can also charge in their locker. Sometimes people do that. I charge at my desk, so sometimes people do that. But yeah, we have a central place where they can pick it up as well.
Now, this is maybe will not happen often, but I just want to make sure all the gaps are covered and not being exploited. What happens if an officer is working undercover or is asked to work undercover in a crowd control? Like, I don't know if you use the code 901. I know you used to, don't use that any longer.
Well, it means something else. It means a traffic collision for us. So yeah.
Okay, all right. If an officer is supplanted into an operation, a demonstration or something, I know that's a tactic that's used by all law enforcement. So we're not saying Oakland is doing something that's unprofessional,
That's
but
right.
it's something that's done by all police agencies.
Yeah.
So that's a case where it's impossible for them to have a body worn camera,
That's correct.
right?
That's correct.
All right. Is there any way that can be exploited? Is there any way where a person could say, I was out here and I was working and he didn't turn on his camera or he didn't bring his camera out and he said, I thought I was working undercover. I thought I was working in the crowd. What is the phrase that you guys use for someone working undercover?
Well, it's just UC.
Okay.
So the thing is, if they're UC, they specifically don't have any of this uniform equipment on because they're specifically not trying to identify.
And that's logical. That makes sense.
Yeah.
I just don't want anybody to
Yeah. You don't want to exploit.
not carry their body worn camera and then use the excuse later that, listen, I was working an undercover assignment.
Right. Yeah. No, because if they have any police equipment on, they're not UC. They don't meet. Yeah.
But Lieutenant Turner, with respect to the earlier discussion about going into the field, if you're CID or OIA and you're going to conduct an interview and you're in a suit, that's not listed here when you go into the field in uniform or wearing uniform equipment. Why isn't it required whenever you go into the field, including conducting an interview as a OIG person or a CID person?
Right. That's a good question. That is a specific carve out in the policy. And so the OIG or OIA people, that's kind of just an example to give for people. They are rarely, that's an internal administrative position. They're rarely going to go out and do anything with the public, but criminal investigation, absolutely they will. And this is a balancing where you have, members of our investigators. There's a specific reason that they wear suits as opposed to uniforms all the time. And it is to develop rapport in things like interviewing victims, interviewing witnesses, going out and canvassing. Many times our investigators will go out to an area where a crime occurred the day after after the uniform patrols will come by, and they'll speak to people, and people will feel more comfortable speaking with someone who's in a business suit, or that doesn't immediately scream police, as opposed to speaking with a uniformed officer.
But
And-
they're excluded from wearing the body worn camera under those circumstances, I guess, and I'm asking why.
Yeah, and it is a rapport developing, and it is mainly because oftentimes we have found that the investigators, when they are doing these investigations, having that camera can lead to issues where people are reticent to speak to, we think about victims or witnesses who are afraid of retaliation or don't want to necessarily have themselves be part of a record, but will want to give information about a crime. That is where we see that, and that's one of the reasons why those officers are exempt during only those times.
One more follow on. Have you ever had to discipline or had any issues with that situation? The suit, no body worn camera, and there was a problem.
Yes.
Can you
Yes.
describe one to us?
Yes, I can. I think this was in an audit recently. The investigators, I believe, they were at the police station. The uniform patrols had brought in a suspect, and I'm probably butchering the details, but somehow there was some kind of physical altercation between the officers and the suspect in an area of the police department. And there was a use of force report that was conducted. There was a use of force report written, a use of force investigation conducted. But one of the downsides of that, I think that the investigators were taking this person to go to the bathroom from the interview room, and he attempted to get away or something like that. So one of the issues was that this was in an area that there weren't surveillance cameras, and the investigators don't wear body cameras. Now in our interview rooms have cameras. They're video and audio recorded at all times. And the video starts when the person is led into the interview room, and it doesn't stop until they are taken out. But this was a blind spot. Now, I don't believe they had to discipline that officer, but I remember that it being an issue because the best evidence is always going to be video and audio. But at the same time, this was one where we said this was an issue. So one of the ways that we tried to solve this was that we added additional surveillance cameras throughout the police administration building, just to deal with cases like that.
I kind of like, the public is really looking forward to having these body worn cameras solve a lot of these problems. So I don't know why anytime an officer is engaged with the public, there's not a requirement, whether it's a suit or not. That's my preference.
Yeah, that's absolutely a valid policy prescription. It is very different than almost every other police department. Most police departments are only going to have a requirement for uniforms because of many of these things around investigations, developing rapport, and things like that. And I know this, the reality is this: if you have a body worn camera on every police officer at every moment of the day, the chances of you catching any time that they are engaged in misconduct or doing something that's not exactly as they were trained is much higher. But then what are the downsides, the things that you might be losing? So it is a trade-off, absolutely.
Frida Caro, who has joined us, has her hand up. I'll go to her and then I have a comment. Okay, go ahead, Frida.
Thank you, Judge Harbin Forte. Sorry for being late. But yeah, I'm echoing Commissioner Peterson's thoughts here that the community really appreciates the cameras. I hear that on video all the time, and I'm wondering why not give the community the option to request that officers remove their cameras so they'd be more comfortable, rather than assuming that it would get in the way of rapport. I think, yeah, that's my question. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's a good one. I mean, you know, I think that we have found a lot of times that people do feel a little less comfortable with the cameras, and also making, you know, requiring that people, especially when we are trying to develop a witness or speak to a victim, to make them, you know, make a request of the police officer. We've already found that that's difficult, and there's other places in other policies where we take that away, because we know that it's, you know, it's difficult for someone to ask for a person in a perceived position of authority to, you know, do something, for instance. So it's definitely a balancing act, absolutely.
Deputy Director Settle, go ahead, and then I'll comment.
Thank you, Commissioner Harbin Forte. You all are bringing up some excellent questions, but to piggyback on what Lieutenant Turner said, we have had many instances where our non-uniform officers go into the field.
You're muted.
Yeah, wait, you turned your mic off.
I'm sorry, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yes, you have many instances and what?
Where our non-uniform investigators go into the field to collect camera evidence or other type of evidence. And we've had our community members say, I don't want a uniform officer to come to my house, or I don't want someone to come to my house who is in uniform. So I think Lieutenant Turner, that is why he made the distinction in the policy where it says if they go into the field in uniform or wearing uniform equipment, because there are occasions when they are going into the field and they will have to put on uniform equipment or be in full uniform. And on those occasions, they will have their camera on. So again, I think it's a balancing act. And, you know, we are taking the input from the community because everyone is bringing up some valid points, but I think it's that balancing act that we're trying to achieve here as well.
Okay, I have a comment and a question. I'm very troubled by the incident that Lieutenant Turner described about there being no camera that captured an incident where there was an allegation of excessive force. When you're in PAB or in any other, or Eastman Station, wherever, why can't you have the non-uniform personnel wear cameras? There's no, I mean, it's not, you're not going to expose yourself or anything. I mean, if people are going to know if you're in PAB or any other police station, you're probably a police officer. So why not ensure that that they have body-worn cameras inside the police department, even though they're not in uniform?
Right.
But if they're going to be interviewing suspects, they're going to be taking people to the bathroom or whatever, and no camera is going to capture. There's still, I'm sure, some blind spots where a camera cannot see. But if you require them to put on a camera, you come in and you're working inside. You may have been out just coming back from an investigation or whatever. But in PAB and Eastman Station, any of the other stations, you have to put on a body-worn camera when you're inside the building. Why not require that?
I mean, I think there's probably ways where we could talk about or work it out that we have the investigators maybe use the camera if they're taking someone to the restroom or something like that, or interacting with the person. I hesitate to say, you know, that they wear the camera inside the building, because actually most of the time that's when our officers are taking, you know, even the patrol officers are taking the cameras off, because the vast majority of work that occurs within the police administration building is the administration. It's not making contact with people. This was, you know, an edge case, and which is why I bring it up. And I do want to apologize. There wasn't an allegation of excessive force. There was a use of force incident that was documented. But one of the things that was brought up was that it wasn't 100% clear, because unlike many other uses of force where our patrol officers or uniformed officers have video cameras, in this case there wasn't, even though the stories of the officer and the stories of the person who was involved did match up, I think, in this incident. So yeah, I think there's room there. You know, I am cognizant of some of the things that the investigators do and the way that they develop rapport and talk to people, understanding also that, you know, anytime that that something is not captured on camera, then it is a sort of I had to say, like, he said, she said, or he said, he said type of thing. So this
So
is
if there,
really,
okay. So it could be that if you're going to take anyone out of the interview room, because the camera is going to be on in the interview room, right? It's going to be recorded in the interview room.
that's right.
So if you're going to take them out of the interview room, then you have to put on a camera to take them to the bathroom or whatever, to call their mama or whatever. But you have to have a camera. You gotta strap a camera to your suit or whatever you have on.
Yeah, I'm not and all due respect to Officer Sutter, I understand what you're saying. We're not saying that they have to be in full uniform. We're just asking, even that if they're in a suit, that they have a body worn camera, that they're not exempt.
Yeah, Commissioner.
Whenever they are engaged. However, and in whatever capacity, they
So-
should have a body worn camera, a body.
Yeah, that is a possibility, Vice Chair. I do think that, you know, the department probably would push back on that because of some of the things that we talked about, right? And you know, to be honest, when we, like any of this body worn camera footage, like let's say I was just a person who was you know, happened to have seen a crime outside my window. The investigator comes, they talk to me. If they're required to wear a camera anytime that they're having any interaction with the public, then my, you know, address and face is captured on there. That's turned over discovery. You know, that is, and I'm sure Commissioner Shea can probably tell, you know, in the PD's office can probably tell some horror stories of defendants who have misused discovery to intimidate witnesses. It is an unfortunate, you know, reality, and I do want to be cognizant of that.
All right, Commissioner Shea.
I have two things. One, I think what we're starting to parse may be not so much the requirement to wear, or as opposed to what situation may require someone to use the body worn camera that is assigned to them. Every person that does, every sworn member does have a body worn camera. This section talks specifically about wearing. We could potentially have a section that says, well, if you're going to go out into the field, you got to bring it with you. Maybe you don't wear it. And then we also need to talk a little bit about when that body worn camera is used. The example that Lieutenant Turner cited sounds like a situation where someone in plain clothes who does have an assigned BWC, who is interacting with someone who is a suspect, who under this policy should have been wearing and possibly using and recording that interaction, this policy may cover. So we may get to those things, but for this one, we're talking specifically about who has to wear one all the time, or in what situations they have to wear it, specifically members who go out in uniform, right? I think there is some way to balance this, but also require that interactions with the public are recorded.
So
Right?
do we
So
have-
it
do we
may
have a-
not necessarily be that they need to wear it all the time. Maybe they do, I don't know, but I think that's a choice. And that choice can either be here in the where requirements or in the required uses or authorized uses below. I don't know. I don't know. We have to decide that. Right. The second part, I wanted to just check in because I wanted to also know, are there any other non-uniform assignments that interface with public that are not mentioned here? Training, CID, OIA. Want to make sure we get the full picture.
Right.
Well, I know recruiting and background, which falls under me, they interact with the public on an almost daily basis related to recruitment, hiring, our vacancies. And they occasionally do work in the field. And when they do, they have their cameras with them. But yeah, that's a unit that does have heavy public contact for hiring and recruitment. And they don't wear their body-worn cameras when they go out into the public.
And so background is background checks, interviews with people, vetting, recruiting is recruiting. Any
Correct.
others?
But that's not that's not an engagement with the public around a criminal matter.
Not
Recruiting
enforcement, right?
Training is quite different.
Correct.
Yeah, our traffic division, they, especially the investigators, may have the officers and I think a sergeant who do mainly sort of the review of traffic, but then they may do some investigations, but also have some interaction with the public at the desk at the Eastmont around traffic reports. That's one. Let's see.
Dr.
That's more administrative. That's somebody coming up,
Right.
buying a report or something like that.
Right.
not-
It is, and so I do want to, as we sort of think about these things that Commissioner Shea is talking about, when we talk about contact with the public,
Yeah.
It can be a wide range, right? I, for instance, am in a position, I'm normally wear my uniform, but if I'm in a position that doesn't have contact with the public,
Right.
for either criminal or anything, but sometimes I go out and go out into the lobby or whatever, and we're a relatively small department, so that does happen.
Any other divisions or assignments?
No, I think those are the main ones. Yeah, training, CID, recruiting backgrounds, traffic.
Pastor Thompson has had her hand up, and then I'll go to Reggie. Pastor Jackie.
Thank you. I have two. Well, one is a comment, as Commissioner Shea has raised. There is a section entitled activation. So, which kind of delineates all of these scenarios that some persons have brought up regarding when a camera should be activated and what interactions with the public will require activation. So maybe some of the thinking around this can be placed there as opposed to where requirements. And then my second question is around officers who have off-duty assignments. Is there any requirement for them?
Yes. Well, first of all, we don't have off-duty assignments in the sense that many other departments have. So, for instance, we don't allow officers to do things like moonlight as security guards or anything like that. Any assignments like that where there is security or something that comes through the departments. It is not negotiated with the officer. If the officer does have a second job or something like that, it has to be approved by the chief of police, and the chief of police does not approve anything where the officer represents themselves as a police officer. But if they are working special assignments or something like that, like the Coliseum, the A's game, they're in uniform, then this policy applies. They have to wear the.
Okay, thank you for that clarity.
Okay, Reggie.
Yeah, I just want to say in the policy writing that we should not lean so much to brevity. We're trying to cut words. I think we need to add more words so that we can have a clear understanding. So the average person who lives on 56th Avenue can understand all of the scenarios that a situation can happen. We just got to talking about, police officer coming out doing a follow-up investigation in someone's home. Does he have to wear a uniform? I mean, does he have to wear a camera? Most folks will say, I don't want him wearing the camera. Because it's gonna let everybody know that the police came to my house.
Mhm.
And that's frightening. That's far more threatening than what the benefit of the camera would give us. What we need to understand is our issue has to be that turning off of that camera and that turning on of that camera and disciplining people about those issues. That's where the rubber meets the road. And all the other stuff we're talking about right now, I think is important, an issue, but not where the real meat of this issue is at. How do we get these cameras on every time an officer engages the public? And is there any situation where the officer is engaging the public that can do something wrong and then, for lack of a better word, lie and say I was acting in another capacity. I was working undercover. We have to block off those avenues to make sure that everyone who is engaging the public, that the public knows you're supposed to have your camera on. And we want that clear to the officers and to the citizens.
Well,
And no
Go
officer
ahead.
should be taking anybody to the bathroom by themselves anyway. That's how you stop that.
All right, Commissioner Peterson.
well, again, I'm just concerned about if we are exempting certain classes of people, why? And if we can include as many classes of people, I would prefer that. That's
And it
why,
should be explained.
yeah.
Might I suggest, Commissioner Harbin Forte, the meat of the matter that Deacon Lyles is referring to and Commissioner Peterson is around that B6, B7 section. Activation, deactivation, all of that. And so perhaps, I'm not saying that we jump there, but what I am suggesting is that when we get there, perhaps that is where that conversation can take place. And then we can go back and reflect on where requirements, because that conversation and that conclusion might inform who should be included in this section there. Just a thought to
Good
consider.
point. Good point. So, so we'll put a pin in that and these concerns. And let's go ahead on and move down. Looks like the next change is in B3.
I did have a question on B2.
Okay, go
And
ahead.
it's around Lieutenant. I want to make sure I have it right. Lieutenant Turner?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, my question is around the BWC may be temporarily moved from the primary location, which we have said is the front of the uniform, unobstructed, recording in furtherance of a police objective. What does that mean?
So it is, as you probably note, broad. So the most part, we use it for recording if a person is in custody in the back of a police car. So we put it on the back of the seats facing into the back seat so that that person is clearly visible. So that, there's no allegations of misconduct, roughing someone up in the back seat, something like that. There are some other things. These cameras can be used, and we saw this in, like, for instance, the 40th Street incident, where a sergeant saw that, everyone was behind the Bearcat and wasn't, their cameras were kind of exposed, or were covered, I should say, by the fact that they were behind a piece of cover. So he took his camera off of his chest and put it on top of the vehicle so that it could actually see the person that they were engaged in. And that was the only clear view of the incident. So something like that. These cameras, we also have had sometimes where people are asleep in vehicles or something, we'll put the camera up on the window of their car and then back off, because it can use that Bluetooth to see. And so it's something that can be a sort of short range and allow the officers to give some distance and time away from that person, but still capture them, something like that. And then it could even be, and I've used it when I was an investigator, to do things like put it on the table in front of a person or something. If we're drawing a small sketch of what happened or something like that, so that the camera captures the sketch or something, as opposed to, you know, maybe capturing the table or just not very advantageous angle.
Thank you for that. I think this might be a good place. I don't know if we can put a note or an asterisk or something there that brings more clarity to that section. Because the way it reads currently, it just gives at an officer's discretion. And I think when you're in a situation where you're trying to build trust, clarity is better. So of course, we can't list every single scenario that you just named, but hopefully we can come back and think of a way to be able to detail that in a way that lets the public know that it is not, for lack of a better phrase, no disrespect at all meant, but when an officer feels like, right? Because that is the kind of the public assumption, but that there are situations and scenarios where moving the camera can actually capture information that will be helpful and useful. So I don't think we can parse it now, but I did want to make that note so we can come back to it.
All right, very good. Okay, excellent. Because you can spell out, you can move it if it's going to give you a better view of what it is you're trying to record, something like that. So it's
For
specific.
example,
Yeah.
for example, e.g.
Yeah. Anybody else have any concern? Marcia, Commissioner Peterson, your hand is still up. Is that from before?
Yes, ma'am, sorry.
Okay. Anyone else on anything in B2?
Yeah, I think it should be, they should not move the camera unless it's for these type of situations. So that I'm in line with they shouldn't have the discretion to move the cameras unless they can articulate exactly why they're doing it.
Yeah, and I think we're saying the same thing. I'm just suggesting that we can't parse it now, and maybe what we can do is offer some suggestions of language like what you just offered there.
Yeah,
So I will
start
make
with
that
the
note.
negative.
And I will add my own note because I haven't thought about it as well, but I don't want to hinder the forward movement. But that's why that notation is there, so we can be sure we come back to that, because I think leaving it as it is problematic.
In other words, Reggie, the BWC shall not be moved
Right.
unless.
And then the person has to articulate it. But I'm in line with Pastor Jackie that we can come back to it and go through those scenarios.
Okay, all right, great. We got a note there. Great. B3. And you indicated that you've sort of combined B3 and OB4. Is that what happened?
That's right.
Yeah,
Okay.
it was redundant there.
Okay, all right. Okay, anything on the proposed changes in B3? If not, we can move on to B4, new B4. Okay.
The only changes there were just the acronyms.
Okay.
So yeah, I did want to, if we're ready to go to B5, I think this was where Commissioner Shea noted, and you know, we've noted as well that there's areas where this really is, you know, and Chief Lyle said it as well. This is where the rubber meets the road of the policy. This is it. When is the officer required to activate their camera? This is the section. This is the section we expect people to know. This is one where you see a lot of variety in different policies. You'll see everything from, I think in Sacramento, where they are required to turn on the camera as soon as they get dispatched to a call. They are in other cities, you see it anytime they're making any contact with the public, all the way to that, you know, officers have the discretion to turn it on at any time unless they are using force, which that to me seems silly, because by the time you're using force, it's too late to think about turning the camera on. So most policies are somewhere in the middle where they have some required activations and some where it's discretionary. Most of the time you'll see things like a required activation anytime the officers are using their police powers to detain or to arrest, or they're using force. So they're engaged in Fourth Amendment seizures, or using or taking away someone's liberty, right? Something like that is typically where you'll see most of these. Many times you'll see ones where they say if an interaction is becoming heated or something like that, that officers may think about turning on the camera. That is one where, as we've seen, I think as our fellows from CPRA would probably tell you that it would be nice to have every interaction recorded. On the other hand, there are many times where officers are just getting out and talking to people, or engaged in follow-up, or just sort of hearing a concern about a neighborhood, and the fact that they might have to turn the camera on and say, I'm going to have to record this because the policy requires anytime I'm making any kind of contact with the public, can have a little bit of a chilling effect, or hurt the development of rapport. So I've seen in my studies a lot of variety in these. I definitely think there's room for clarity, this section is mainly built on what our current practice is, which is around very centered on this idea of Fourth Amendment seizures, searches, and uses of force.
Okay. Anyone else, anything on that? I think
Are there more? Let's keep scrolling down. 7 is the last one. Yeah.
8 is the last one. So we've added this where if they're engaged or if they just got into a collision.
So back to Pastor Jackie's concern about whether we can capture in this section when these cameras should be activated, and when a CID or OIG, OI, what was the acronym? The new acronym, OIA, that's not here.
Right. So this presupposes that whoever it is wearing their body worn camera. If they are, if they have it on, that they activate during these situations. So a detention, arrest, if they are contacting someone because they think that they're involved in criminal activity and want to confirm or dispel if that's true, if they're assessing 5150, things like that. This is based a lot on the pattern and practice of the Oakland Police Department, which is that the vast majority of our enforcement action is done by uniformed officers. Now it is not 100%. And there are those edge cases where where we have seen. And the question is, do we want to make sure that we eliminate all the edge cases, or while removing some, or possibly putting in some things that might harm interaction with the community, or vice versa. That's a balance that I've seen sort of every different way. And then, even for the uniformed officers, do we want to make it, clearer in terms of times when the camera needs to be activated, but then possibly include times when they are interacting with people where they're not, suspecting that person of criminal activity.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry, I just want clarity on, because I know this is the part that we will spend a bit of time parsing. Number 7, transporting any detained or arrested person, members working as the prisoner wagon transport officer may deactivate their BWC. Prison wagon transport officer, is that the person who was driving, or is that the person who was in the back with the person?
Yeah, there's no one in the back. The only
No
person,
one in the back.
that's right. So
Is there a camera in the wagon, or is that a situation where that officer could take their BWC off and position it in the back?
Right, good question. The wagons have cameras, multiple cameras inside the prisoner compartment to capture.
Okay, so that might be another note
Mhm.
where that clarity is established.
And so let me ask as well, the language that we got in 7, we could parrot it and talk about transporting or any detained or arrested person to the bathroom or something. But not to deactivate, but that you have to have activated prior to transporting any detained person, arrested person,
I
Right.
think the word is escorting.
escorting, whatever way, yeah, escorting.
I think escorted could be either added or replaced. That's a consideration.
Okay, because yeah, transporting is by vehicle, and that is, yeah, one of those ones that needs some clarity, so.
Yeah,
But the point, so if we need transport is in the vehicle.
Right, so this would be one where we'd add like a separate number and say.
A
escort.
separate number,
Yeah.
which is escorting any detained or arrested person to the bathroom or something. You go find whatever camera you've been assigned, you snap it on before you take the person to the bathroom so we can see and we can hear every conversation that you had with the person on the way to the bathroom and back, particularly in case you threaten the person or you
Or spontaneous
use
submission.
force.
Spontaneous admission.
Or somebody use some spontaneous submission. They could say something that could be evidentiary that's
Absolutely.
recorded there. So there's a positive to it.
Yeah,
I also think that if you're escorting anyone, I wouldn't just say to the bathroom, just escorting anyone,
Yeah, escorting.
i.e. to
and
the
I think
bathroom.
maybe it could reference within the department or within the precinct or, something that shows they are
That's
not in a
right.
vehicle, but they are stationary actually at OPD,
That's right.
regardless of that circumstance. So
Yeah.
again, I know
Yeah,
we
don't
can come back and parse language, suggest language, but just have it.
Mhm.
custody.
Yeah. Yep.
Yes, thank you.
So,
Sophie.
yeah, great.
Oh, yeah, I don't know if you have to say.
There you go.
Somebody's troubled. Who's troubled?
I'm not troubled. I'm still troubled on any, I want almost a last one that says that it is activated whenever an officer of any status is engaged in some contact with the public that may require further, but I don't know, something about, I want more people, not fewer people. I don't want anybody who's engaged with the public who, in a criminal matter, not the administrative people. I understand that, of course.
yeah, this is the hardest one. This is absolutely the hardest one.
But I do think perhaps a statement could be considered around situations. And again, I'm thinking off the top of my head, I'm a wordsmith, so I'll get it at some point and send it. But situations that have the potential to escalate.
Yeah,
Because I do think that is the concern. The concern is that there are often interactions that on their face seem to be benign. And then
Right.
something happens, something occurs, they escalate, and then there is something. And so if there were a way to even capture those
like a
um,
catch-all.
interactions that may not necessarily start off as criminal intent, if you will, but begin to escalate, there's a way to capture that. So I'm not sure if that's what you were getting at, Commissioner Peterson, but I know that that's a concern of mine.
No, that's the concern I have. I don't like the fact that someone is in a suit, but yet they're engaging the public around a criminal matter, and that yet they are exempt. So I want to catch all like this.
There you go.
And I will say, maybe this is also where the sleep mode, activation mode, some distinction can be brought there, because my mother was of that generation where she didn't want no uniform, nobody. coming to her house.
Right,
And it had a lot to do with how she was going to be perceived by her neighbors. And
exactly.
then there were other situations where they thought you would be, they didn't know if you were being an informant. They didn't know, it was a safety concern as
Exactly.
well.
Exactly.
And so I
Yeah.
do think that there are some situations where there may be ununiformed officers and they will have to make an on-the-spot decision to record.
Right.
So I do recognize that, but I think something like 10 could capture all of those other matters.
Right.
Yeah, yeah. And I agree. We do have to be sensitive to the fact that people lose their lives if they think they're a snitch. So we have to be very sensitive to that
That's true.
possibility. So I don't know that I necessarily want all the investigators to go out with a camera on the front of their outfit somewhere. So we do need to strike a balance if we think about it. But for all those reasons, people don't want the police coming to their house. They don't want anybody to know that the police visited your house and you sat there and talked with them and stuff, because they may know you've seen something that you're not supposed to have seen anyway. Or that again that you're snitching. So okay, let me add, but I think the point is well taken that we're again put a pin in this and we're gonna come back to 10 and we're gonna massage that and we'll try to work out some good language. I'll go to Commissioner Shea and then the Chief Lyles.
So I have, I suppose 2 or 3 things. What I would suggest as the catch-all, and what I think for a variety of reasons that we don't have to get into today, I have that the body worn camera should be activated anytime a member comes into contact with a member of the public for any investigatory purpose. That could be criminal or administrative. Sure, we'll want to hear about why, if, how. I'm thinking about IAD, thinking about CID. This does not require that they wear it. These required activations are for any members who are assigned the body worn camera, right? So they can use a variety of ways to activate it in their pocket, for instance, whatever it may be. I also wanted to have in here the recording of identification procedures, show ups, lineups, photo IDs, so that it complies with state law. And let's see. And because part of the reason, well, not about this one, but about the first part, is that this section, as we discussed at our first session, was very focused on the police power, right? Very focused on detention and arrests involving suspects. But I don't think that's what we're getting at, right? I don't think that's necessarily the concerns of everyone here. And I do think that it could be much simpler for members to have one general rule of, if you're on scene for an investigation of some sort or coming onto a call, you turn it on, and here are the times you turn it off, just for simplicity's sake, right? But
Commissioner Shea, with
Goes both
your
ways.
number 11, could that possibly go into some kind of introductory paragraph for this section? If that's going to be like a general, because that seems like a general descriptive paragraph, period. And these numbered items are specific situations. So if we were to scroll back up, I don't know if there's anything introducing this section around activation. Oh yeah, maybe it could be added right there. After we define what activation is, then that general statement that you just made that we have listed at number 11 could be a part of that kind of catch-all situation, and then roll out to the specifics. Just
yes, it could. I think it will depend on whether this ad hoc decides that it is the general rule that we work with or not. I'm just throwing it out there for now so that we have it there and we can I'm sure we're probably gonna talk about it a lot. I'll yield.
Okay, Chief Lyles.
I was concerned about, okay, I know if you're in public, you don't have to be notified that you're being recorded. But if we're implying in a policy that we want officers to, activate the device, maybe not telling the person. If that's what we want to do, we ought to find a way of saying that in the policy. If that's a proper behavior. And I'm inclined to think that it is. I'm inclined to think that if there's a smart officer out there, he's doing more recording than not doing recording. And to protect themselves and make sure that he or she are staying within the guidelines of the policy of the general orders. And then you guys may have had this answered when you went down to see how this whole system works. But I've been told, and I'm just want to verify, are we about to engage in a policy or a contract where the recording will go on when red lights and sirens are code 3? Is that going to be automatic? And is it going to be automatic every time someone draws his weapon? And is that the case? And is there a cost to that?
That's already the case. There is a cost. That one actually was approved by the the city council. So there is a cost. The city is currently in contract with Axon for these cameras and the storage and things like that. And so the ultimate cost was around $8 million over 5 years to include all of this technology, including the storage, which is really the most costly part. But right now, the automatic activations we have are that code 3 with the red lights and sirens on, that automatically activates anyone's body-worn camera in range. If the officer pulls their service handgun, there's a piece on the holster that will automatically activate the camera. If they pull out their taser and they turn the taser on, it will automatically activate. If they spark the tasers to show it, and if they fire the taser, it will automatically activate. So we do have automatic activations. Those are already in place.
And does that include the recording like 30 seconds before the camera actually goes on? So
Yes.
they can pick up conversations and stuff? Thank
So
you.
in the ready mode, it does include the 30-second buffer, which is currently video only. Yeah.
Should that be in the policy? Should we know about that in this policy?
Yes, sir. No, that actually is in the policy here. So it says about the ready mode, and this is why that mode is required, because that ready mode is when the 30-second buffer it talks about is activated, and then that allows for those automatic activations.
I was actually implying, directing my conversation around the code 3 in the drawing of the weapon and the
Oh, yes.
drawing of the taser. Should that be in this policy?
Oh, yeah, I see. Yeah, I think there is room for that, and especially around testing. I know that's something I've seen in other policies. So I think that is one, that I'd like to add some of those technical specifications in.
And then what is the length of time do you have to keep the recording?
So we do have that retention schedule. That's also that's on the Police Commission's website. So right now, the way that this purchase was approved through the Privacy Advisory Committee, the minimum retention is 2 years.
Okay, great. And then if we're just having regular radio traffic, police phone calls, radio traffic going to your radio, your broadcast room, how long do they keep those recordings?
Those ones are on the city retention schedule, so those might be 5 years. They're pretty long. Yeah. The calls into the radio room and the radio traffic. Those
all phone calls come to the station 5 years. So if somebody wants to go back and get those things, and they can get it.
They're definitely available. Yeah, they are on the city retention schedule. I don't quote me on what the city retention schedule is, but they are definitely on the city retention schedule.
Thank you. That's I appreciate that.
So
I think that should be all outlined. That should be all stated here, so people who are trying to figure out how to protect themselves, how to defend themselves, can read this policy as opposed to going to 5 or 6 different policies to gather that information?
It occurs to me that I forgot about the signal technology with the automatic triggers, that perhaps in the function checks that we have above, that the members should also check, make sure that those automatic triggers are functioning.
Yeah.
Okay. We're making very good progress, and so many great ideas and are being put forth. This is getting better. Where are we next, Lieutenant Turner?
So before we move on to the next section after that, could we go back up to B4?
Okay.
So I wanted to ask about the sleep mode, specifically number 3 at the direction of a commander or supervisor.
Yes.
When does this happen?
So the main place where we're going to see that happen is at debriefs. So this was a frequent issue when we have for the signal technology. So if I, am debriefing these folks, and then someone drives by with their code 3 lights on, it'll activate everyone's camera, and then might, have some sort of information about our tactics or something like that that wasn't meant for the general public. And so at that point, if I'm running a debrief afterwards, after everyone is separated from any members of the public, I might say, okay, everyone put their cameras on sleep mode so we can have this debrief. We can talk about our tactics, things like that. And then when we're done, say, okay, everyone put back in ready mode, go out and go back and put yourself in service.
I can't remember, is the switch to sleep mode logged in some way?
Every button press is logged, yes. So you will see in the audit trails of these devices, anytime you're pressing the button, even if it doesn't work, it's logged.
Okay.
So would this be a time to say, for example, but not limited to? A given example.
Including but not limited to.
Yeah, including but not limited to.
Yeah, this is not the same as turning your camera off, deactivating the camera. And I have a note about later on, but whenever you see at the direction of commander or supervisor, you want to make sure, or that it's clear that it won't be for nefarious reasons. No aspersions, guys.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else on this section? Okay, now we get into B5 on required activation.
Yeah, so I know there's, and there's some way we can work a little bit on this, maybe look at some of the other policies. This may be, Commissioner, I'm not sure if this is one where you want people to sort of just think about it, because a catch-all might be something where a lot of these things might go away, right? And it's very, very broad, and might have something like, at the start, before arriving at the scene of every call for service, when contacting anyone involved in any sort of investigation, then, these other things become moot because they're included in, right?
Right.
That
was my thinking around his statement on number 11, if you all decide to go with that. Although I do think more information is better than less. We don't assume that people know what what even a call for service means. That's an internal phrase that you all would know. But the average person hearing that or reading that may not know what that is. So it still wouldn't hurt to list it, but some of these I do think will go away, and they would just be, for examples or bullet points. But I do think that this section will change once there's a determination on what a catch-all kind of statement or an overarching, let me not say catch-all, an overarching statement would be regarding activation.
Mhm. I think that's great. Okay, so, and so we'll come back to B5 anyway, next time, as we go over there, maybe we'll enhance it, we'll be able to clean up. So B6, we didn't get to B6 right after we finished B5, we went back up, so now B6, deactivation of the BWC. And it's 7:19, so we got about 10 more minutes. So
So for, keep going, or
let's go ahead and see, let's get someplace on this. How many numbers do we have on B6 here? We have 8, 9.
There are
We got,
multiple. This is another
11.
one where, I agree with Chief Laus. This is really where the rubber meets the road. So these
Mhm.
are ones where I think it's really important to sort of get people's ideas and thoughts about this, but then we're definitely gonna have to come back to this one.
I wanted to suggest that there be a portion that describes the procedure for deactivating the BWC so that members know, hey, that they should do X when they deactivate the BWC. For instance, say on before they deactivate, hey, I'm deactivating for this reason. And presumably it would be one of these 11 reasons.
Okay. So
Is
just
this
as we
all
say,
This isn't meant to be an all-inclusive list though, right? Or
It
is it the
is.
all-inclusive list, I should
This
say,
one is when the camera is turned on,
right?
they need one of these reasons in order to turn it off.
And only these reasons, okay.
That's right. So they shall not deactivate until one of these occurs. So sometimes this, if this could be clearer or, a little more overarching, as Pastor said, I think that'd be helpful.
I think an overarching statement, which we will not come up with tonight, is needed. And then once again, these kinds of bullets can be listed because some of what we said in activation already negates some of what I see in deactivation. And so there's going to need to be some continuity there. If we are saying whenever there's interaction with the public, then deactivation can't take place when you've just, it can't happen when you've decided this person is no longer going to be investigated. It almost has to be that it is deactivated once the interaction ends. We don't know how the interaction is going to turn out. It can be a walk away. It can result in being detained. It can result in arrest. And each of those scenarios have a different dictation. So maybe what I do know, can we scroll down a bit? Because I think this is the section where we had noted in this section in general, there needs to be a reinforcement of disciplinary policy around those who fail to comply. I think that's going to need to be restated at some point right around this section, but I'll leave that there because I don't think we'll have enough time to parse it, although we have some thoughts.
okay, we could make a note on it. And with respect to some introductory language, just as we say activation is turning the camera on, we could say here deactivation essentially is turning it off or whatever as the first lead-in sentence to follow the same format as in the beginning of activation. Yeah. I think that it's 7:22. What we could,
I like to look at this for a week or so.
yeah, that's what I'm thinking. We could, and everybody can look at 5 and 6 here, and really kind of compare them. So we could take this up when we come back, our meeting week after next.
Yeah, and Commissioner, actually, I had one piece of business from the department.
Yes.
Is the chief suggested, and he said, hey, is there a way that maybe if the commissioner, we could invite members of the ad hoc to come to the department to use the virtual simulator. So we use it for de-escalation training. It can be used for force options and things like that. But it's it's a way to sort of show how a call for service or an interaction might occur. And then to sort of see how some of these things might work out in terms of turning on the camera and some of the things the officers do. So that is something that we definitely can facilitate to sort of, it's not the same as actually sort of strapping on the whole uniform and going out and answering calls, but it's similar, and it's you know, definitely a interesting interaction. No one gets hurt, so we'd absolutely love to have you all if you'd like to come.
So we go physically to the station,
Yeah, so
or you're doing it virtually?
it's
Excuse me.
it's a thing called Virtra, where it's a virtual reality simulator. So you actually stand in a it's not true virtual, there's no goggles or anything, but you stand in a sort of room that's made out of screens and interact with people on the screens. And depending on the way that if you're able to successfully de-escalate a lot of these scenes, it does not end with the use of force. So it really reinforces some of these things. But it also can show things like, you know, when we might interact or turn on the camera, things like that, chance encounters, things of that nature.
And I'm asking because I'm wondering, it would be great to sort of do a training, group training for the commissioners. But I'm wondering, I think that members of the public would like to see it as well. Would there be any reason that the members of the public could not participate?
I don't see any reason. I know that the department has hosted other members of the public before, business leaders and some sports folks and stuff have come through that I've been aware of. So yeah, I don't see any reason why. And I know people who are members of the Community Policing Academy also are able to go through this. So I don't see any reason why they wouldn't be able to.
So now
I
let
think
me
we'll
ask.
just need to know ahead of time how many people, so we can make sure that we would have enough space and that there are enough officers there to be able to assist with this virtual training, so to say.
Okay, and in terms of the terminology, when we're talking virtual, we're talking about just the simulation of what's going on. We're not talking about this is going to be done over Zoom. Is that what you're saying?
That's right. Yeah, it's not done on the
Okay.
Zoom. It's actually in person, but it's a
Okay, all right. And that's why I was thinking if it's going to be done like over Zoom, we could see it through Zoom, then we just do it at a regular police commission meeting or something and try to add it on. But people will need to be physically
yes.
at PAB in order to go through it. Okay, well, we'll talk with the chair.
Yeah.
And see when we can do that and how we do it and open it up to the public. And maybe you all can kind of let us know how many members of the public could do it. I mean, if how many commissioners do we have now? If all 9 commissioners show, how many more seats, how many more spaces could you accommodate? And it may be that all members of the BWC ad hoc want to be there.
Right.
Chief Lyle.
We ran into a Brown Act issue the last time we were trying to get more than 3 commissioners together. So
Yeah.
I'm not sure if
More than 3 commissioners want to come. We can it's not just a one and done. We can host multiple times. You know, but yeah, no more than 3 commissioners at a time, please. So we're not violating.
The other thing that you could do though is we could hold a commission meeting at the police department and regularly notice it. We have the authority to hold meetings. Well, we're all virtual, but we have the authority to hold meetings outside of and we're required to hold meetings outside. So we could set it, and the location could be the police department. All of us could be there. It could be basically a training like we've done police commission trainings before. And then the members of the public would be entitled. We actually probably couldn't put a limit on it, not much of a limit on it. So we should figure out, it will be helpful if you let us know how many bodies you could accommodate. We just notice it as a regular police commission meeting, put it on a Thursday. And instead of doing our Zoom meeting, we're doing that. So, we can, I'll talk with the chair about the meeting. I don't think it'll violate the Brown Act, for her to be the fourth person that we talk to about having, having a meeting at PAB. So I can talk with her about that. And see what we say, but that would be
Commissioner
good.
Harvin Forte, I have one last request before I have
Yes.
to. Can we scroll
Yes.
down Lieutenant to B10?
Can we do
I just
what?
scroll down to B10. I just want to make this note. That statement right there, delayed or non-activation of the BWC when activation was required by policy shall be documented in an appropriate report, blah, blah, blah. Can we make a note by that statement? Because something like that is what I'm referencing after B6 and B7. I know it's numbered
Okay.
differently now, but I just want to make sure that we don't miss that between now
Okay.
and next week because life happens. So in the
Okay,
next
all
2
right,
weeks, I
perfect.
didn't want to forget.
Great notes. Okay, gang, it's 7:29. So I want to thank everybody again. I get so jazzed when I have these meetings. And I just love having everybody come together and share their ideas and thoughts and their commitment and their passion. But this is making a good product. I do want to invite another member of the ad hoc. I want to try to get Fania Davis, who is a past executive director of RJOY, Restorative Justice for Oakland Youth. I want to see if she's able to. We invited RJOY, but the executive director, current executive director, never responded. I
She's
think
making
that
a
I.
pres- She's
Hmm?
making a presentation on Thursday. Tiasha
I know
Bennett-
she is, yeah, but she did not agree to join this ad hoc. We invited her to join the ad hoc. And so Fania, I'd like Fania in just as another citizen, not necessarily as a representative of RJOY. Because the current executive director just may not have the time. I know she's very, very busy. And yeah, I know that she's on schedule. But anyway, I'll talk with Fania to see if she's able to do it.
Thank
And if so, maybe the current ED can designate her as a representative of RJOY. Otherwise, Fania can just participate in her private citizen capacity. So anyway, I think we're good. See everybody week after next. Thank you. Have a great evening, everybody.
Thank
Okay,
you.
bye-bye.